Willkommen zum Reinsurance Podcast, live aus Baden-Baden. Wir sind hier für die jährliche Rückversicherungskonferenz, wo sich führende Mitglieder der Branche versammeln, um über die neuesten Trends, Herausforderungen und Innovationen zu sprechen. Bleiben Sie dran für exklusive Einblicke direkt von der Konferenz. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with our usual favourite podcast guest who can give us the insider view on the ground. Tom Spier, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Do I still get called a guest at this point?
I mean, kind of. Like, we let you in occasionally enough for it to be special, and But no, seriously, you're our eyes in amongst all of the many meetings that you're having and that are happening on the ground here in Monte Carlo. In Monte Carlo and Baden-Baden, I should say.
Baden-Baden. Feels like we just got back from Monte Carlo.
Does literally feel like we just got back. The weather's nice as well.
The weather is beautiful.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, which is a nice surprise.
Yeah. But how are you finding it? What's the main topics coming out so far? Are people just here nice to see each other, or?
It's good. There's a lot of buzz, and the conversations, as always, every year are more real than they are in Monte Carlo. I think Monte Carlo is all about positioning the renewal season. It's about high-level statements that people make, and now I think we're further through hurricane season, and so people are starting to get a real handle on what that looks like and the impact that's going to have on pricing. I think people can start to have real conversations around what the renewal period is going to look like for them.
Exciting. And has it been, as I think some people feared, overshadowed by Milton, or has that changed a bit as we've got closer to the event?
I think it has an impact, and it's a big discussion point. How much of an impact it will really have on pricing, I think, remains undecided. One of the things that we've seen a lot in the media recently is just the huge range of estimates in terms of like how much this event is actually going to cost the industry, with lows around 17 billion and highs kind of north of 50. Ultimately, if it's at the high end of the scale, then it's going to have a material impact on 1/1 pricing, and if it's at the low end of the scale, then it probably won't. So it's difficult for anyone to draw any real conclusions from that. What's interesting is that this conference is so Eurocentric, though, and so US cat events, I think most cedents here will be arguing that should have no impact on what they're doing, and so there's still a lot of conversation around the really localized cat events that happened throughout the last 12 months, such as storms in Italy and events in Greece as well, and kind of those southern European risks. Perhaps looking at what the pricing impact of those events are going to be a little bit more than Florida hurricanes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting to see that how strongly they can hold that line, because it does seem that when the wind blows in the US, it still has an impact all over the world. But not just the wind, because obviously people have been talking a lot about casualty and social inflation of claims again in the US because of litigation financing and so on. A lot of players actually here in Europe are affected, surprisingly. I hadn't realised how many companies here have exposures in the US, plus are also part of the same global reinsurance market. So somehow those finances out in the US are driving up prices for everybody, I suppose.
It's cedent's job this week to try and explain how those changes in risk profile aren't going to affect them.
How do they explain that, Tom? How can they prove to their markets that they are not to be washed amongst the general crowd, but are actually presenting seriously good opportunities for their reinsurers?
As always, what we see is that the cedents who are most transparent and are seen to have a real handle on how losses are accounted for in their reserving, how their data is flowing through from their underlying systems into their reinsurance submission. That transparency is really appreciated by reinsurers, and we're seeing much more emphasis on things like that. As brokers and reinsurers try and position themselves as being easier to do business with, they caveat that with the need for cedents to be transparent.
Completely. I remember the symposium that kicked off this event. The two key themes that seemed to come out were partnerships and data quality. And I think the way partnerships was described was, it's something that you choose to renew every day, every month, every year, rather than something that's a foregone conclusion. So a lot of that partnership depends on, that transparency that you've described, having the data quality that people can rely on to know that their relationships are in a good place, which it sounds like are lacking. I don't know if you've heard this from reinsurers you've been talking to. Are they happy with data in the market as things stand?
Yeah. Since we've been coming here, I think people talk about the power of the relationship and how much these face-to-face interactions over events like this mean to those relationships. But the thing that probably hasn't been spoken about as much in the past, but we really are hearing this year, is that at the end of the day, it's a business relationship.
Yeah.
You can like people as much as you like, but this is about a financial transaction. It's about transfer of risk from one balance sheet to another. And at the end of the day, that has to work for everybody. And so if you're being transparent in a business sense, as well as being a nice person to get along with and spend time with, there's more ingredients to a relationship than just having a nice lunch and meeting up in nice environments in Baden-Baden.
Very, very true. And so we saw that this data quality theme has come out again as an ask from the reinsurers. Is anyone actually moving on it? Are people doing things about it in your Supercede conversations, for example?
Yeah, we're seeing people really start to respond to that ask. And we're in a position now where Supercede's a little bit more mature than it was a couple of years ago. I think a couple of years ago we released a white paper here actually that spoke about the need for more transparency, the importance of data accuracy and clear audit trails around assumptions that are made in data. And we tried to explain the impact that we thought that would have on pricing or access to capacity. What we've started seeing now is that's been proved out.
Yep.
So we now have customers that we can point to who are achieving better risk-adjusted outcomes in their reinsurance purchasing than they previously were without using the platform. So that just spurs more interest. And so we've been really pleased with the amount of engagement and interest that we've had.
Yeah, completely. I myself have also been receiving sort of inbound meetings where the subject has been, we've been getting pricing lows, we've found out why we're getting pricing lows, and the data is at the course, can you help us? So super exciting to see the market switching on and realising there is a solution out there that they can use as well.
Yeah, long way to go, and I think we're really pleased that we can be part of that solution. But yeah, the more engagement, the better.
Brilliant. And obviously still very much a specialty market that gathers here as well. We've seen, I think, the first cyber event here at Baden-Baden, bringing people together. You're attending, I believe? Or?
I am. It's this afternoon as we record. So not much that can be said on the outcomes, but I think the fact that cyber now has such a prominent place on the agenda and on the calendar at an event like this just shows how much that market has matured over the last few years, and cyber reinsurance in particular, right? I think cyber insurance probably for the last 9 or 10 years has been a hot topic. Lots of people have earned lots of money for conference organisers over that period, but the reinsurance side of it hasn't necessarily been a big focus at these wider reinsurance events. So great to see so much engagement, so many high quality speakers, really well organised by Gallagher Re. So looking forward to that.
Really exciting, and we'll hear, I think, from a representative there very soon. So stay tuned for more episodes whilst we're here in Baden-Baden. Other topic, I guess, that's coming up, and actually I found people are talking about less than expected, maybe trying to ignore its looming shadow, but US election only 2 weeks away. So everyone in Baden-Baden knows it's coming. Do you think that will have much bearing on the renewals season ahead?
It's hard to say. So they moved PCI significantly earlier this year to make sure they avoid that. That's a very political conference.
Yeah.
You don't see the same level of reliance on political outcomes with European insurers.
Yeah.
I think they take quite a pragmatic view of, America will make the decision that America wants to make, and we in Europe will be accepting and supportive of it. Ultimately, in terms of policies that affect the reinsurance industry, there isn't an enormous amount of difference between the candidates that are coming out. I think the Biden administration very broadly continued on the same policy basis that affects European reinsurers as the previous Trump administration did. And so yeah, you're not looking at that. I think it's always, people in Europe are always a little bit nervous of an America that begins to shut its doors to the rest of the world, and they'd be urging that not to happen and for international trade to continue unabatedly. But yeah, that's probably the only thing that's been on people's lips.
Yeah, I think if anything here, actually, people have been more worried about the division between the two options and whether we'll see SRC, strikes, riots, and civil commotion activity. Whether people storm any Capitol buildings or burn down important and expensive parts of America as a response to whatever the result is certainly on the insurance and reinsurance world's mind. So hopefully it'll be a calm and stable result, whatever way it goes, so that we don't have too many claims there.
Calm, stable and orderly. You sound like a reinsurance underwriter.
Indeed. No, indeed. I did have a few other topics that I wanted to quickly cover off more generally whilst we're here, but I've forgotten most of them. So anything else on your mind before we wrap up, Tom?
No, I think we're looking forward to the rest of the conference. As I said, there's the cyber event this afternoon that there'll be a lot of focus on. As we move into tomorrow, we're expecting to see more focus around some of those southern European risks and exposures that we've seen. So some interesting conversations still to have. A load of interesting guests that we've lined up on this podcast. So yeah, midway through and still loads and loads to look forward to.
Brilliant. And if you had to guess at the one-word adjective that's going to be echoed around the industries to describe the upcoming 1/1 renewals, where would you put that? I think we had orderly last year, didn't we?
Yeah, I've heard calm.
Yeah.
A few times.
We had nuanced as well, was another one that came out.
Relationships, good data.
Yeah. Exciting. We'll see where we end up. We'll see how results from Milton gradually crystallise over time, and hopefully speed on to a happy 1/1 all round.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show, Tom, and see you around the conference.
Cheers, Ben.